The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time sucks.
What?
Is what somebody might say if they woke up this morning and decided, I think I want to have a really bad take today. Okay, yeah, Ocarina of Time being one of the most influential and legendary games of all time, not exactly a hot take to say that. I'm not exactly a trailblazer in holding that opinion. Even though if you're between the ages of 30 and 45, you've probably either played the game or you're at least aware of its significance to some degree. Keep in mind, on the original N64, which did only sell like 32 million consoles by the way, Ocarina of Time sold 7.6 million units, so it's not as if every gamer ever has played this game. 7.6 million units is not really huge by today's standards. I would wager that most AAA games would be considered kind of a flop in today's market if they only sold like 7 million units. And yeah, look, I know it's been re-released on the 3DS. I know that it's been available on the Wii and Wii U Virtual Console. You can play it on Switch Online. You can basically play this game anywhere, even unofficially on PC. Nintendo, don't send your ninjas to my house, please. Even considering all the places that it has been re-released, there are still millions of gamers out there that have never experienced this game. People of my age that have been playing games since they were little kids, I would wager that Ocarina of Time was a transformational gaming experience. One of those games where when you played for the first time, it really changed the way that you look at games and what a game can be and represent. And with rumors of a remake on the horizon, a remake that has not yet been announced as of the recording of this video, it is May 16th, 2026. Let's see how long it takes me to edit and post this video, and you can tell how lazy I am. I thought it would be fun to revisit this game, what makes it so iconic, and does it still hold up in 2026? Also, as a quick disclaimer, before we get too far into this video, I just want to talk a little bit about how I went about playing this game. I actually used Ship of Harkinian, which is a really cool PC port that you can play. Well, of course, you have to provide your own copy, which I have here. Thank you very much. Call off the lawyers. I've played this game on original hardware. I played it as a child on my N64. I had the gold cart, which I should have kept because it's actually kind of worth some money now. I wanted to play it on the PC port because first of all, there's a bunch of quality of life improvements on there. You have a free camera that you can use. You can install 4K texture pack, which I did. You can run the game at higher than 15 FPS. If you're looking at the gameplay thinking this looks way better than I remember, it actually does look way better than you probably remember. Okay, anyway, let's get into it. The year is 1998 and 3D gaming is finally coming into its own. Gone are the shackles of pixel art. We're playing in 3D now. Gaming is finally grown up. And of course, the beginning of 3D gaming absolutely cannot be discussed without discussing the most iconic release of 1998. I guess we can talk about Zelda instead. Highest rated game of all time, according to Metacritic, of course. I mean, I think everybody would agree with that.
I don't understand the hype between
No,
Ocarina
I
of
played
Time.
Okay,
I thought I was... No, I kind of got bored of Ocarina of Time.
Okay, fine. Me and at least 7.6 million people that have played it maybe think that. Ah yes, waking up in a forest, otherwise known as camping. Who knew Link and I had so much in common? The story starts here in Kokiri Forest, and man, let me tell you, as a kid, this place felt so huge to explore. I remember just running around and talking to everyone. Replaying this game now, it seems a bit small, but it really did feel alive in 1998 and felt like you were kind of in your own little hometown. Ocarina of Time really felt like a grand adventure at the time, and I would wager it still does by today's standards. For a game that came out in 1998, it's surprisingly open after you get out of the beginning area. It kind of takes the shackles off and does point you in a little bit of a direction, but you're kind of on your own to wander around the world in Hyrule and explore and figure out what you need to do next. And although there is a main quest that you are supposed to be heading to do at all times, there's also a lot of side quests and activities that you can do that are really exhilarating. Okay, maybe they're not all exhilarating, but you get the point. The game felt free. It felt like I had control over where I went in the world and what I wanted to do. And it just felt like that sort of agency wasn't exactly common of games at the time. And I think replaying it by today's standards, it still does feel pretty open. We take it for granted now, but it really wasn't all that common at the time. If Breath of the Wild was your first Zelda game and then you went back and played this game, it might feel a little bit limiting in comparison, but at the time it really did feel like you were on a grand adventure as Link and you had a quest that you had to accomplish. Saving Princess Zelda, saving Hyrule. Ocarina of Time is legendary, sure. Does it hold up in every way compared to modern action-adventure games?
Hell no!
Listen, Ocarina of Time deserves all of its plaudits. Does that mean that the game is perfect? It does not. Some of the direction in the game is exceptionally opaque, and unless you use a guide, you will find yourself lost trying to figure out what you're doing next. I feel like this was a feature of the era. Getting lost in a world was actually really nice, but at least me personally, I could see how that would be a little bit frustrating to a first-time player that doesn't really know what to do and where to go, and it's really not that clear. Listen, Ocarina of Time is almost 30 years old, so yeah, it's got some blemishes. I mean, it released on the N64. Although at the time, a pretty powerful console, it had a lot of limitations that it had to operate within. Of course, it's not going to stack up on a technical level with modern games, but I don't really feel it's fair to hold that against Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time in '98 felt like a huge, massive world, and of course, if you play the game today, the world doesn't feel that large. It does feel a little bit more confined. But one thing that has aged absolutely beautifully in these games is the dungeons. Dungeons are such a unique aspect of the older 3D Zelda games, which is why half the fan base really wants that to come back. There's really not anything like that, not only in modern Zelda games, but I would argue in modern gaming. Modern Zelda games have kind of taken dungeons in a different direction, where you use your preset list of tools that you have to kind of navigate the dungeon in whatever way you see fit, and there usually are multiple solutions, which is really fun, and I would argue maybe even more complicated game design. But the 3D Zelda games kind of use what I would call a lock and key system, where typically what happens is you get an item pretty early on in the dungeon, and that item is relied upon as you progress through the dungeon to solve puzzles, find treasure, and of course eventually finding the boss key, fighting the boss, getting your heart piece, freeing the sage, and slowly but surely getting closer to your impending fight with Ganondorf, who's he's a real asshole. Both modern Zelda dungeon design and classic Zelda dungeon design has its merits, and they kind of both have pros and cons, but there's something special about a pre-curated list of puzzles that the developers know that you're gonna go through with these items. The retro-style dungeons, in my opinion, are such interesting game design because although they are highly curated and often very linear, I think what works so well for the retro-style dungeons is that you're given a confined space, and Nintendo's really able to pack a lot of density in there as far as puzzles and branching paths. Also, there's a whole side quest with gold Skulltulas, and you have to find them throughout the world. There's even some in early dungeons, like the Deku Tree, for instance, where you can hear them, but you can't reach them yet, so you'll know that you have to come back when you get other items. That's just really cool, and it adds another layer of replayability into the game. The dungeons also all have their own feel and personality to them. When you walk in the Forest Temple, it feels very different than when you walk in, say, the Spirit Temple, or when you walk in the Fire Temple. These locales are iconic, and the music really adds to that and brings them to life. These dungeons really set a really cool tone, and you never quite know what you're gonna experience when you walk into one. For example, this music scared the absolute shit out of me when I was a kid, and even on repeat playthroughs, it gives me a little bit of the heebie-jeebies. That's another thing about Ocarina of Time. On the surface, it seems like a very jolly and happy-go-lucky game, but there's some pretty dark themes in this game. Upon replaying, bottom of the well, there's like basically a torture chamber in there, and the Shadow Temple is basically full of dead creatures and blood and monsters everywhere. I mean, just look at this guy. I'm not quite sure that it reaches Majora's Mask level of creepy, but there are some serious dark themes in this game. Speaking of tone, I really want to talk about the music in this game. Ocarina of Time's soundtrack is full of absolutely legendary bangers. Song of Storms, Lost Woods, The Spirit Temple, the Shadow Temple, the Forest Temple, as we've talked about already. I find it really difficult to think about another game of that era that has such an iconic soundtrack that really sort of permeates the series going forward. If you think about some of the songs and themes that originated in Ocarina of Time, those songs have kind of shaped the musical front of Zelda since. The music of Ocarina of Time is unreasonably good. It actually makes each area feel distinct. That's one of the criticisms of the more modern Zelda games. Although Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, they have different biomes and whatnot, all of the shrines kind of feel samey. And one of the ways that Ocarina of Time kind of breaks that mold is that it uses music so that you know exactly where you're at. And when you hear that music, you know exactly what it's representing. When you hear Song of Storms, you're gonna remember the windmill and that creepy guy standing there. When you hear the Shadow Temple theme, you're gonna remember the Shadow Temple. That music from Bottom of the Well is still creepy to this day. The music evokes evokes a lot of nostalgia, but it's not just nostalgia. The tracks are genuinely catchy and good. It really instills a strong sense of place when you're exploring Hyrule and going to these different areas. Hearing that menu theme, replaying this game for the first time in a really long time, just honestly almost brought tears to my eyes. And yeah, from a technical standpoint, sure, the texture quality and general performance of Ocarina of Time looks like ass compared to modern games. I mean, there's just no way to put it. But at the time, honestly, this game was kind of impressive. Listen, going with cartridges on the N64 certainly had plenty of downside, but the upside is you had near instantaneous load times, and that really made the world feel seamless when you were navigating it. Sometimes with games, it's less about the actual technical specs of something, and it's more about the intangible quality that a game has. And Ocarina of Time has tons of character. It just has such a distinct style that it's hard to quantify. The game just has personality, man. I mean, the locales, the characters, the music, it really makes Hyrule feel like it's brimming with life, and in my opinion, overcomes a lot of the technical shortcomings even by today's standards. And that leads me into an even broader conversation that I personally think is really interesting, and that's when you're critiquing iconic retro games, what standard is it fair to hold them to? Is it fair to compare Ocarina of Time to more modern action-adventure games? Or should we really think about it versus its contemporaries? I think that the answer is probably somewhere in between. Some of the most iconic and well-known video game designers of all time reference this game when talking about their influences. So I think when we're looking at Ocarina specifically, we have to consider the legacy that the game has. We should be able to look back on a game like Ocarina of Time and say, sure, compared to modern games, the world feels small, the graphics don't really hold up all that well, but also the music, the dungeons, the characters, even the story is pretty strong. I think these elements are pretty timeless and would 1000% hold up in a modern game if the game was built in a modern context around those building blocks. I think without Ocarina of Time, gaming as a medium would look very different, and I think that's something that merits appreciation from the wider gaming community, even if you're not a fan of Zelda. So yeah, replay Ocarina of Time, it's really good. Or don't, I don't really care what you do. I'm pretty much done with the video now, but I thought it would be fun to kind of discuss the potential remake and what I would want to see in a remake. What I would really like to see them do if they remake the game is something akin to the modern like Resident Evil remakes. I think it would be cool if they kept the theming exactly how it is, and even the world layout relatively similar, but expand on what's there. I wouldn't be mad if they kept the dungeons pretty similar, but maybe just made them feel a little bit more broad. Hyrule Field really could use a lot of expanding upon, and even Castletown, along with Lon Lon Ranch, to just add more surrounding that particular area, really flesh out those characters, maybe add some additional side quests, and Castletown as well. In the original, you can tell that the N64 just couldn't render a lot of NPCs at one time, so they kind of took some shortcuts with that in Castletown, but I would love to see those areas, like Lon Lon Ranch, Castletown, Kakariko Village, even like Gerudo Valley, like really flesh that stuff out a little bit, but keep the bones of the dungeons there and all the theming similar, and I think that you really would have a winner. As far as the graphic style, I'm really not sure what they're gonna do. I would love to see them do something that's kind of similar to this art, you know, the original promotional art. Obviously, at the time, they couldn't really achieve that from a technical standpoint, but I think it would be so cool if they went all in on that. I don't know what that would look like exactly. They kind of did that with the 3DS remake, but in higher fidelity, I'm not quite sure what they're going to do with it. It's really fascinating. I think that they have a really difficult job here because if you stray too far from the original, you're really going to upset the fan base. But at the same time, the rumor is that it's going to be fairly large budget, so that would, to me, tell me they're really going to expand on it a bunch. So I'm really excited. I hope we get to see it soon. But anyway, thanks for watching. Until next time.